No.
Okay, Jai Masi to all of you.
Jai Masi.
I want to thank God and our Professor Zivan Lama also, and all of you. I have this privilege to preach in front of you. Today we are going to look from the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 21 till 33. Book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 21 to 33. Let me read it out for all of you, for all of us. Here it says, submitting to one another in the fear of God. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is the great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. We have read this passage, and here Paul is saying marriage is only beginning. We must work in our marriage. So I want you to preach a sermon about work on your marriage. Here Paul is saying two specific things to two people. First one is wife, second one is husband. And very clear instruction Paul has given to the wives: submit to your husbands. And he has also given the clear instruction to the husbands: love your wives. This is the whole passage is about, what Paul is talking here. To make a beautiful marriage, we need to work on the marriage. This epistle is written by the Paul in AD 60 to 61 AD. When this epistle was written to Ephesus, we can see that three different kind of people were living in that city. There was the people from the Rome, there was the people who were Jewish, and there was the people who are living in Ephesus. At that time, Ephesus was the big city of Roman Empire. Now it lies in, we know that it lies today in the Turkey, Ephesus city. So at those times, people see wives and women as an inferior person compared to the man or husbands. So it is controversial topic and writing at those times, because it was very difficult to write at those contexts, because people see women as inferior to man. That was the context, and belief system at those times. So Paul started writing from verse 21, and it says, submitting to one another the fear of God. I really do not like the Nepali Bible separating verse 21 and verse 22. If you see in the Nepali Bible, there is one heading we can see in the Nepali Bible between verse 21 and verse 22. And the heading says that exhortation for wives and husbands. If we look at in the Greek Bible, we cannot see that verse 21 and verse 22 there is a gapping. We cannot see any kind of gapping. But Nepali Bible has made this kind of gapping, and verse 21 and 22 is separating from each other. What Paul is saying, before he's saying something about the marriage, he started with this statement. He says that submitting to one another in the fear of God. In the Greek Bible, there is no gapping in verse 21 and verse 22. We can see that. So Paul is saying that submit to one another. Wives submit to husband. Husbands submit to your wives. Women submit to other women. Man submit to other men. This is the thing Paul is saying, that we must be submit to one another. This is what Paul is saying in verse 21. It may be many times when the people preach, they will preach from the 22 only, because they don't like to be submit towards other people, especially towards the women and the wives. But Paul is not saying like that. Paul is saying that submit to one another. Submit to one another. This is how the Paul started this passage. Here we see in verse 22, he's saying, first of all, to wives, if you want to work on a marriage, you must do something. And that something is one thing, that is submit to your husbands. And Paul has given two reasons why you have to submit to your husbands. Paul clearly gives two reasons. First reason we can find in verse 22, that is lordship. Paul says, wives, submit to your own husbands as the Lord. We submit to the Lord. We want to please the Lord. Why? The reason is, Lord save us. Christ loves us more than any people. This is the reason that we want to submit ourselves to Christ. So, Paul is saying to wives, as you submit to the Lord, in the same way, submit to your husband also. Submission is different than obeying someone. I like the famous quotation which is made by Son Grace, and he says about submission. He says, what Paul has in mind, that Christians should reject self-centeredness and work for the good for others. Submission is nothing more than a decision about relative worth of others. So here we see that what he's saying, submission is not obeying but living self-centeredness, working for someone's benefit, someone's success. It is a submission. So Paul is saying to the wives first thing, that as you have been submitting to yourself to the Lord, in the same way submit to your husband also. More we love our wives, husbands, listen carefully, more we love our wives, it will be more easy for wives to submit to themselves for us. It is very easy to submit to the Lord because Lord loved us. So here Paul is saying to the wives, submit to your husband as you submit to the Lord. So it is a practical application for here for the husband also. Second thing is why wives need to submit to their husbands, Paul is giving reason. Second thing is headship. We can find this thing in verse 23 and verse 24. Paul says that man is the head of the family. Here the word head is in Greek word used kephale. Kephale means there is a three meaning we can find in the book of New Testament, in the entire Bible of the kephale. First word kephale used for to describe the ruler of the community. Second meaning we can find that kephale means the source of something. Kephale is used to describe the meaning that God is the source of everything. And third meaning we can find the meaning of the kephale is giving the direction. It is very close to the leadership. So we can find that kephale means headship means having the leadership, leading something. So Paul is saying here that in verse 23 and 24 that God has given this authority to man. Man is the head of the family. So it is the reason that wives should submit to their husbands. Wives should help the husbands to lead the family in the systematic way, in God's way. This is the two reasons that Paul has given why wives need to submit to their husbands. And the second thing we can find that it is written for the husband. It is written for the husband that they should love their wives as Christ loved the church. We can find this thing in verse 25 to verse 32. If we see in the whole passage from verse 21 to 33, we can see that for the women or for the wives, Paul has written only 64 words. But to the husband, he has written 173 words. It means husbands have more responsibility towards their wives. Because the reason is that husband is the head of the family. He is leading the family. And Paul is saying that husbands have more responsibility to fulfill in the family. So that's why he has written 173 words for the husband. So Paul has written how husbands can love their wives. We can find four main things in this passage, how husbands can love their wives. First thing Paul is saying in verse 25, sacrifice. Verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. As Christ has loved the church, in the same way, in the same manner, you should love your wives. Christ forsook all the authority. Christ left all the glory, all the power. Not only that, Christ gave his own life for the church, for the believers. You should also sacrifice yourself for your wives. This is the teaching of the Paul. You are the head of the family. That doesn't mean that you are going to rule as a king. This is not the way to being a head of the family. You are the head of the family. You have to love your wife. And the first way is you have to sacrifice yourself. You have to give your wills. You have to leave your wills many times for the sake of your wife, for your wife's prosperity, for your wife's successful, to have her success, you have to leave your will and desire. First thing is saying that as Christ sacrificed himself for the sake of the church, you have to do same thing. if you want to love your wife, this is the way Paul is showing. Second way, he's saying sanctification, 26 and 27. He says that Paul has written that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of the water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such things, but that she should be holy and without blemish. As Christ worked for the sanctification of the church, you should do same things if you love your wife. This is the way how you should love your wife. The second thing Paul is saying in verse 26 and 27, you should work for the prosperity of your wife, for her future. What God has laid for her, what God wants to be her, that kind of environment husband should create, where she can be a successful, Paul is saying here, where she can be a perfect, that kind of environment husband should create in the family. The second thing is saying that sanctification, as Christ worked for the church so that it could be blameless without any spot. In the same way, husbands should work for the wives, for the sake of the wives, so they could be successful in their job. They could achieve the goals which God has prepared for her. This is the job of the husbands, to create that kind of environment where wives can get their success. The third thing is saying that concern, we can find in the verse 28 to 30. Paul is saying, third thing, love your wife. This is the way. As you care for yourself, as your body, in the same way you should care for your wife also. Nobody hates his own body. You have to nourish your wives. You have to care for her emotions. You have to treat her in the same way as you treat for yourself. You have to take her pain as your own pain. As you deal with yourself, in the same way you have to deal with your wife. The third thing is saying, Paul is saying, concern to your wives. Love your wife as you do love to yourself. Third thing Paul is saying, concern, verse 28 to 30. Fourth thing we can see in verse 31 to 33, and Paul is saying is, fourth thing Paul is saying, if you want to love your wife, here I want to teach you how you should love your wife. Fourth thing is commitment. We can see in verse 31 to 33. Love is a feeling, but marriage is a commitment. We have to be committed in every situation to love our wives. There will be good situation, there will be bad situation. There will be interesting situation, there will be tough situation. But Paul is saying, in every situation you have to be ready to be committed to love your wife. Because this is the closest relation in the whole earth. It is the closest relation rather than your father and mother's relation. Paul is saying here. We can see in these verses 31 to 33, Paul has written, that's why the man leaves his own father and mother and lives with his husband and wives. Because after marriage, they will be not two persons, but they will become one person. So marriage is the commitment to live together in every situation, every tough situation. If you like, if you don't like. The Paul is saying that what commitment you have made in marriage to be one, not be two, head and body. You have to fulfill the commitment in every situation. Verse 31 to 33 is saying like this to us. So Paul summarized chapter 5 verse 33. He says that man should love her wife, and Paul is replacing word submission to respect. When you submit to someone, you will respect. So in conclusion, Paul is giving in verse 33 same thing, that man need to love her wife in every situation, and women or wives need to submit themselves to husband in every situation with the respect he is saying. So we can see that what Paul is talking in this passage. Paul is saying two things, very simple thing. First thing to the wife, submit to your husbands. And two reasons Paul have given. The first one is because they care for you as Lord cares. It is the job of the husband God has given. The husband cares for the wives. That's why you have to submit yourself as you submit to the Lord. And second thing, the man is the head of the family. Husband is the head of the family. That's why you have to submit yourself to make a good marriage, good family. What application we can find from this passage? Very simple but powerful applications Paul has written for us. First thing is, wives need to learn to submit to their husbands, knowing that first one is as the Lord, not the capital L-O-R-D, small L-O-R-D. God has made the man. Second thing is because of the leadership God has given to the man. And second thing is for the husbands. And Paul has written especially in the 4 areas how husbands should love their wives. Number one is sacrifice. As Christ left everything including his life, sacrifice himself for the sake of ours, we should sacrifice our will and desire for the prosperity of our wives. Number two, sanctification. We should create such kind of environment, and we should put effort where they can be how God wants her, our wives want to be. Number three, concern. We should love our wives as we do love to ourselves. And number four thing is commitment. We must fulfill our commitment to love our wives in every situation, because God called us, husband and wives, to be one till the death. So we must be faithful in our commitment till the death to loving our wives. Thank you very much.